Morning and welcome, welcome, welcome. My pants. Good to have you all here this morning. I welcome you here in the sanctuary and also online as you are joining us on the holy interwebs. It's good to be together on this beautiful Labor Day. I'm sure many of us are traveling, but the ones who are here, good to be together. So here is how the Hindu story goes. In the beginning, humans all went to the same river to get their water. And they would walk to the river and they would fill their little containers and then go back to their places. And then they would get used to doing this day after day, month after month. They would fill their little containers and then go back home. And then one day, they'd go to the river and another person shows up on the other side of the river. Oh, that's new. Another human being. And they too fill their containers, and then they walk away. So this keeps happening, and more people show up on the other side of the river, and they fill up their containers, and then they go home. And then one day, these people tire of looking at those people over there. So they think, what should we do? What a great idea. Let's dig a channel and lead the water of the river over here, and then we come and fill our buckets from here, and we don't have to look at those people over there. So now they do that, and they do that for a while. But lo and behold, after a while, some people show up on the other side of the channel. And it's okay for a while, but they then tire looking at them. So then they dig another channel, and then those people dig a channel, and then everybody digs a channel. And pretty soon, the channel diggers forget that all the water has come from the same river. And that is the human condition. Now, the axial time, we call the axial time, it's about from 900 to 200 before our common era, is when all the major religions, the ones that are still alive today and the ones that we still know today, when those religions were formed. So we know that as the axial time. And these are, of course, the Greeks, then India, the Hindus and the Buddhists, then Islam, and then, of course, Judaism, the monotheism, right? It's Judaism, Islam, and then Christianity. Christianity, of course, a little bit later in the beginning of the Common Era. But this is the axial time. This is that time when, must have been in the water, people established a thinking, a philosophical, religious thinking, that the masses gathered around and begun sharing and begun shaping their lives according to those teachings. This is the time when the channel digging really began earnestly. And then, of course, in the centuries following this time, we've done an even better time at dividing, at sorting ourselves from each other. Today, however, well, let me tell you just this before. I think that all religions owe us one thing today, and that is to bring us back together. The separation had been done over centuries, and I believe that religions today owe it to us to bring us back together, to remind us that it's the river that feeds us all. Forget the tributaries, forget the channels, forget the different philosophies. It is that main river that feeds us all. So what is the main river that feeds us all? In China, Confucius, said that everything you do not wish to be done to you, you shouldn't do to someone else. Today we know it as the Golden Rule. And in each of these religions that had formed during the axial time, this Golden Rule shows up one way or another. Hillel was a rabbi, a famous, very famous rabbi who lived in the last century before our Common Era and then died in 10 of our Common Era. And famously, a pagan came to him and said, I will convert to Judaism if you can sum up the Torah while standing on one leg. And Hillel said, that which you hate to have done unto you, do not do unto another. This is the entirety of the Torah. The rest is only commentary. Now go and study it. You can do that on one leg. It shows up also in Islam. Muhammad, the prophet, whose name shall be blessed, also said that how can you feel at peace when anybody around you is suffering? It's impossible. In fact, he said that Islam is not so much a belief system, it is an action. And the action ought to be to take care of one another. Jesus said also, and this is important, he said, love thy neighbor. And of course we may say that, well, how can that be? How can I love somebody who professes beliefs that are so against everything I believe in, everything I stand for? And especially in today's world when we are so divided. How can I love somebody who is on the other side of this divide? And it's good, therefore, to look into what Jesus said. So the word love he uses here, which is, he is offering a commentary on an Old Testament from the Leviticus. This is a text from the Leviticus. He's using the word hesed for love. And hesed has nothing to do with feelings. It's an agreement. It's when two warring kings make peace and then they promise hesed to each other. I will take care of you. If you are in trouble, I will come to your aid. I will protect you as if I were protecting my own self. One could say that NATO is a hesed among countries. If anybody within this hesed agreement is attacked, then all of NATO comes together and we will protect you as our own. Hesed. That's what Jesus uses. So how do we get to this point of hesed love? It's difficult. It is difficult because we are emotionally so charged. I am emotionally so charged as well. I have a physical reaction when I see a display, a clear display of somebody who I know that stands on the other side of the political divide. And how can we still come together? Because I believe it, that if we cannot find our way back to compassion and to this golden rule, if you hate something, do not do that. Do not visit that upon someone else, that which you hate. If we cannot find our way back to that, I don't think that we're going to have much of a future and planet to leave to our offsprings. And religion has done a fine job of driving the divide deep. And it is religion that has to find the way back to compassion and this hesed. this love that is void of feelings. It is a contract. So even if we may be different, I stand for you. I protect you. Compassion. What is compassion? Compassion is standing with someone, feeling with someone. That which you go through, I allow myself to experience it to the best of my abilities. I walk in your shoes. Compassion. Compassion changes the world. Feeling with someone changes the way we look at another when we are able to put ourselves in their shoes. Each of these major religions, the ones that were formed in China, Taoism and Confucianism, in India, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, and then Judaism, speak of compassion, and they have the golden rule in there. Some are worded in a positive way, some in the negative, like that which you hate, do not visit upon another. And then there are the Greeks. The Greeks were also, they established the Western rationalism. And this is, however, what they did. They created a new form of, I don't know what to call it, a tragedy, the Greek tragedy. They are the Greeks, of course, who created that. And the first tragedy that they ever showed, and this was a state matter. They would, for the time when the tragedy was performed by actors, the prisoners were freed, and they had to attend, and they had to watch the tragedy performed. Everybody had to watch it. This was a state matter. And the first one ever performed, as far as we know, is called The Persians by Aeschylus. And it's like this. The Greeks warred against the Persians, and they won against them. But before this happened, the Persians came into Greece, and they killed a bunch of Greeks, massacred them. It was a horrible, they visited horrible atrocities upon them. They destroyed their temples. It was very painful. So then the Greeks ended up fighting against the Persians again, and they won. And this tragedy, and the point of a tragedy is to weep together, to really, really cry, not just shed some tears, but like really cry. And this tragedy was about seeing the humanity of the Persians, weeping for the Persians, for the loss that they suffered. Here are the Greeks who had been terribly hurt by the Persians, and they're weeping for the Persians. They're crying. And it's the state that demands all its citizens to come and watch this and partake in weeping, a form of tremendous compassion. Can you imagine weeping for a certain presidential candidate? Can you imagine weeping for the people who drove the planes into the Twin Towers? To see their humanity as well. It's not even conceivable in many ways. And if we are not able to see each other's humanity, it is almost impossible to come together. And I will leave you with this last story, and it's also from Greek literature. It's Achilles. Achilles is a great warrior, and he's a commander of the army, and he has a quarrel with the king. And at the time, they were warring against the Trojans, the Greeks. And Achilles is so hurt, and he has a temper tantrum. So he pulls all his troops from the war, from the field. He says, okay, king, you do your thing, I do my thing. And this is terrible, because now the Trojans get the upper hand, and they end up killing Achilles' very best friend. And he is beside himself. He is so stricken with grief. He can barely take it, and he's angry, and he wants revenge. And it is the Trojan king's son who killed Achilles' friend. So he challenges the prince to a duel, to a fight. And they fight it out. So on one side are the Greek troops, the other side the Trojan troops, and in the middle, these two are fighting it out. And it's a tremendous fight, and Achilles ends up killing the Trojan prince. And he's not satisfied with just killing him. He ties the corpse behind his chariot, and he drives it around and around on his best friend's grave. And then he refuses to return the body to the family, to the king, which means in the Greek belief system that this body could never find eternal rest. It would forever have to wander. And in their belief system, that was one of the worst things that could happen. So the king asked Achilles to please return his son's body, and he refused. He refused. So the Trojan king disguised himself, and at night he snuck into the Greek camp, and he went to Achilles' tent, and he revealed himself. And everybody was astonished that here is the Trojan king making himself completely vulnerable in the camp of the Greeks. And he threw himself at the feet of Achilles and begged him to please return his son's body. And Achilles looked at him, and at first he was angry and defiant, but then he saw his own father in this king, and his heart changed. And he picked him up, and he wept with him. Compassion awakened in him. And then he went and got the body, and he placed it very gently into the king's arms, gently. He was worried that maybe the weight is too much for him. And returned the body to the king and wept with him. Compassion. Seeing the humanity in the other. Seeing the humanity in the enemy. Religion, all religions, owe us a huge debt. To the degree that they have separated us, they now must bring us back together. They now must remind us that we all drink from the same river, that our differences are nothing but commentary, and what we have in common, that we all suffer. And that which I don't want to suffer, I should not visit upon you. And if we all lived by that, I believe this world would be a better place. I believe that we would find our way back together. And I believe that it's the only way into the future. This which we have created thus far is not serving us. So may we all live by the golden rule. May we all try hard to summon compassion, not just with each other when we preach to the choir, but with the other who shows up differently, who believes differently. For it is the only way into the future. And so it is.